Hi everyone, Milad Reza here. Today we're going to talk about 3 superannuation structures that are available. It's a video for someone that's had a superannuation for a little while. They've been thinking, what else is out there? I want to grow my super, but kind of sick and tired of going from one fund to another with pretty minuscule outcome. As someone that's realized that going from one fund to another in today's world, apart from saving a few $100s maybe in fees, there's a lot of overlap going on. For someone that wants to dig a bit deeper and understand what are the real opportunities out there when it comes to super. There are 3 superannuation structures available. The most common one is what we call the master trust structure. The second structure will go into real big depth today because that's going to be the main focus of today's video. And the third structure is a self-managed super fund. So what we tend to see is individuals, they want a bit more choice, they want control, they want to sort of have a super fund that they can do a lot more with. So they jump from a master trust super to a self-managed super fund. And that's a pretty big leap, and one that I would say what I've seen in the last sort of 12 years is that it's lightly taken. It's a massive leap, and you need to have the inclination and understand the level of work that goes with a self-managed super fund. You no longer have the luxury of having a provider there to look after everything for you. So you have to make sure you're doing everything spot on so that you're not caught with any penalties. The master trust structure, going back to the first one, is if you have never had an advisor, if you've never sort of sought advice, if you haven't sat down with your accountant or a property guy, chances are you are sitting in a master trust super. And the reason is because by default, your employer, or most employers, I would say, would slot you into a master trust structure. And that's irregardless of whether you have an industry super fund or you have a regular retail fund. So that's not really relevant in today's video. And most of that is a bit of marketing gimmick going on. If you're in a master trust super, you're in a master trust super. And the other side of that is, in 2013, advisors ceased getting commissions from super when they open up new accounts. So that debate is no longer relevant, nor is fees in today's world. You probably find most super funds are pretty competitive in fees. That whole debate of retail versus industry is a bit outdated, and it's probably what's catching most people out when they're really looking for big opportunities. The second structure is what we call a wrap super fund, WRAP, and it's slotted in the middle of these two because for most people, they would consider this a sort of best of both worlds. You still have a big provider at the top, but you just get a lot more investment choice and a lot more control with it. And one of the biggest differences is that with this structure, it's an unbundled super structure, meaning you receive all your benefits and entitlements directly to your super. And we'll go a lot more in depth with that because it's pretty important to know. To make this video make a lot more sense, I'm going to write all this out on a piece of paper and allowing you guys to follow it, and the difference is a lot better. Again, this video is very crucial for anyone that's had a bit of super built up. I would say anything over $60,000, and they want to really step it up and understand how they can really move the needle when it comes to their super fund. All right, I'm just going to draw some lines here, give you 3 columns. So we're going to go through the master trust, super. I'm going to go through the self-managed super fund, super. And we're going to go through the wrap. But the main focus is going to be probably on these 2. We're not going to talk too much about self-managed super fund. That's a whole nother video, but it's quite complex. Give you a bit of an idea. It's do-it-yourself fund. It's a fund that you need to have the inclination. You have no longer got the luxury of a provider there sorting out everything. It's down to you. The ATO will be after you if there's anything done incorrectly. Compliance wise, you got to make sure you are all over it. You have to have your super fund audited every year, and you got to have an accountant. Make sure potentially and I would say you have to have an advisor for the insurance and the investment side of things and making sure that your super it's doing what it needs to do. But ultimately, if it goes pear-shaped with your self-managed super fund, you can't then go, well, I had an accountant, I had an advisor, I had a whatever in running this thing. You're ultimately responsible to make sure that your self-managed super fund is compliant. So again, it's nothing to sort of being taken lightly. You got to really be all over it and have the inclination. And for most people, when they go from a master trust where they have basically done nothing with their super, they might open up a statement annually, they might have a statement, they open it up annually and have a bit of a look to see what's going on with it. It's probably not something you want to sort of just jump into without understanding all that is involved with it. So the master trust is, as I mentioned, the first structure. And like I said, most people would sit here. And if you have not received advice, again, you would be in this structure as your employer would just slot you in here. It's a sort of a background super that we refer to as it. It's a bundled super fund, meaning that everything is done within units. What that means is that, say you got some units in place, all your fees, investments, income, tax benefits, all that is done internally inside of these units. So the transparency is quite low with this sort of structure. And as an example, if you have, say, $100,000 of super, if each unit is worth $1,000, then you would have 100 units. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, the units. And everything is just done internally in these units. Versus a self-managed super fund, just to make this point, you would have your own bank account that's allocated to the self-managed super fund, and everything is in and out of this sort of bank account, quite transparent, which is one of the big factors that people do move across because of the transparency and the control. So this is a really important note because it's going to feed into the other points that we make. It's a bundled super. When it comes to the investment side of things, you've probably gone online. If you've had that sort of level of interest with your super, you've thought, well, how can I sort of change my investments? You've probably seen, and you've probably seen, I would say, 4 to 5 sort of generic one size fits all sort of investments. You've got your balanced fund that everyone is pretty much slotted into, even if you have not made a conscious decision. Some people have the high growth or the growth. They're the main, 4 or 5 investment choice that you would get inside most master trust providers. So your choices are quite limited. There's not much you can do there. And you can't really unbundle it either to see exactly what you're invested in and what sort of businesses and so on. And you can't really go out there and invest in international shares or anything like that. It's quite limited in what you can do. The other side, in terms of cash flow management, there's not much you can do in that space either. You can't really allocate much extra into your cash account unless you start making some big calls and selling some assets. So when it comes to preserving your super fund in a market downturn, when it comes to retirement, you're going to be potentially caught out there as well when it comes to sequential risk, which just refers to selling when the market is down. As an example, say the 2008 crisis happened and most super funds went down quite harshly. If you're retired, you have to take money out to live. So people would have selling off their units. Let's just say they dropped from $1,000 per unit to $100. They were still selling them to take money out of their super. So you're selling off the farm quite cheap. And that's why you see retirees go back to work, because once these units are sold, they're gone forever and you're in a bit of strife. So really high level today. We're just scratching the surface. It's quite challenging to get into all of these points. We will in later videos, but I just want to give you sort of a high level difference between the three structures. Moving on with the wrap super fund, like I said, best of both worlds to a certain extent. You got a provider at the top still, just like you would over here. You got a big provider, super company, and they would look after the admin side of your super, making sure that it's running smoothly, making sure that it's doing what it needs to do. It is an unbundled super, just like the self-managed super fund. So good news there. You get to have all your benefits paid directly to your super. So there's no transparency. There is no entitlement. Some long words here. And dilution sort of implications as you would have over here. As I said, everything is done within these units. So you would have some transparency, entitlement, dilution challenges, especially if you want to know everything is what's happening with all your entitlements. Some really important entitlements that we're going to get into in a second. Investment choice compared to the 4 or 5 generic ones, you would get 600 plus choice usually with most providers. And again, big super companies, so the names won't be too foreign once you go down the route of getting advice. So you can really tailor your super exactly to your sort of preferences, objectives. Once you have that conversation with your advisor, then they would go, all right, well, these are the sort of things that are important to you. Because there's so many options here, we can really tailor a portfolio that meets all of those goals. Last point, you got the what we talked about before, cash flow control. You definitely do get some cash flow control here. Very different. So you got your designated central hub system, and I'll go through that in a second so you can understand the exact differences. So with a wrap facility, you got your provider at the top. And the only thing they do is look after the administrative side of your super. They don't do anything more or less. They have zero influence on your returns. Zero return influence. Versus over here, if you have a super fund, you would have everything done internally, whether it's investments, insurance, everything, administrative offering. So everything is done under the one umbrella. And, you know, most people would say if one person is doing everything, they're not doing it that great. So the provider at the top, all they look after is make sure your super is running smoothly. Like I said, you're going to get access to 600 plus investment options. And these are big fund managers across Australia, globally, you know, 20, 30, 40 years of track record. Big players that, you know, if you have had any interest in investments, you would have come across them. Big players globally in Australia. So this is the area where your returns actually are influenced. Nothing to do with who your provider is. So when you go, oh, who's my provider? It's irrelevant. All you want the provider to be doing for you is making sure they're not charging too much admin. You want to make sure they're not charging too much admin, and this is where your advisor would do the comparisons for you. Make sure they're coming back with a pretty decent provider, and the investment options menu. So from the 20, 30 different providers out there, they all have different investment options menu, and that's where we can sort of fill out a nice portfolio for you. Some offer a bit more, some offer a bit less, and that will probably feed into the administrative cost as well. But in terms of the actual fees, I actually missed out on that. The actual fees, because most people will probably think that, well, what are the fees going from a master trust to a wrap? It's quite similar. There's not much there. When you're talking about thousands of dollars of benefits that you potentially don't know what's going on with because it's all happening within these units, compared to that, it's quite minuscule. And I'm talking a lot of entitlements that most people leave on the table because of the limitations within the master trust. So fees pretty much on par with a master trust. Nothing that you'll look at really twice, especially for someone that's got funds of over $70,000-$80,000. Now, your biggest difference comes from this central hub system called a centralized cash account. Everything from your investments flows in and out of this account. Everything goes through this account, basically. So all your income from your investments, all your franking credits, which are really important tax benefits for individuals, all back into this account directly, versus in your traditional master trust super funds, all of that is paid into these units. So you don't actually see what's going on. There's no way to check what you should have received, what you got, and so on and so on. And again, that just franking side alone, franking credits, and if you're not quite sure what franking credits are, maybe chuck in Google franking credits, which should give you quite a good response. These days, with the first option being an AI explanation, it's pretty easy to get across those terms. But basically, long story short, these are tax benefits that are paid to you because you have invested in Australian shares. And most super funds, whether you know it or not, they're investing in a lot of they're investing in Australian shares, and heavily so. So you want to make sure all the benefits that you're receiving are going directly into your account, not to the units where you can't actually track it. So this centralized cash account is really the massive difference. And again, you can do some really good tax strategies, investments, and cash flow strategies within this centralized cash account, which is quite different. It's pretty much the same as what you would have in a self-managed super fund with a bank account, where you have a designated bank account that everything flows in and out of and everything gets paid into. But it's just done internally inside the super without you having to worry about all the burden of the self-managed super fund. So quite massive there, especially when you're thinking about someone with a large amount of money in their super. They can do some great work and have all the benefits paid directly to their super. So again, guys, if you're thinking about, what else is out there with my super, how can I grow it? Am I going to be missing out on anything? I'm, 20, 30, 40 years old, or even if you've approached and you're nearly into your retirement, this structure would provide pretty vast benefits right up until the last day that you use your super. And that would be pretty important to be all over. So night and day in terms of the way these two work. Not as big as a difference of these two, because then this is, like I said, do-it-yourself fund, but still, for what this offers, the wrap super fund for most people, it's quite a good option. Again, you need to make sure that this solution goes in with your goals, but for most people that are trying to sort of get a bit more control, have a bit more investment options, make sure that everything they're entitled to is paid directly to them, it's a pretty good option for super. Now, we've only scratched the surface today. If you would like to find out what this wrap super fund could do for you, or what your current master trust is up to, there is a link at the bottom to book in a 30-minute free video strategy session with one of our advisors. We'll go through your current setup and sort of give you a few options there. And the good news is that for most Australians, if you decide you want to get some financial advice when it comes to super, you can pay for that advice directly from your super, meaning there's no impact to your cash flow, which is what most people have been doing for a very long time. So good news there. You can improve your super, get everything sorted out, and go from there. Now, last point I'll raise, some people have got some insurances. I'll put the 3 lines here again. So some insurances within the master trust, and they might go, well, if I move into another structure, what does that mean? Well, the wrap super fund, you can definitely sort of hold on to your covers if you decide you want to do that, or go for some new insurances and still pay for them from the wrap super fund directly. These are APRA regulated funds, so not much change there. Going back and forth between these two is quite straightforward. If you decide the wrap super fund's not for you, pretty much a similar sort of exit strategy that you would have with the master trust, pretty straightforward, versus the self-managed super fund. If you decide it's not for you, it's a fair bit more work involved with winding that up to make sure that you're compliant in doing so as well. So they're the 3 structures. Really important to dig deep, like I said at the start, and understand what these 3 could do for you. Again, the self-managed super fund, I've seen that pushed too many times from accountants and property people, just because that's all they can give advice on, and that sort of fits their business model. Because if you've got a self-managed super fund, then they can set you up and you can purchase a residential property within it. But the wind-ups are pretty full on, and the shine wears off for most people after 2-3 years, and the burden is too much, and they revert back to a master trust, not knowing there is a structure right in the smack bang in the middle that can do a lot more for them than just going back to where they were before. So again, the link's at the bottom, and if you've got any questions, lock it in and we'll have a good chat. Thank you for watching this video, guys. We are releasing videos every other day, and be on the lookout for these videos so that we can help you more with your financial world.